I think we now have a glimpse at why their business relationship fell apart.
Which gives me an adequate window to fire off a couple rounds. Pure business.
Hello friends, and welcome back to ReddX, your source for the freshest daily cringe content anywhere on the internet. Promise, swearsies, it's just a fact, and it's totally science. Go ahead and look it up at your leisure, of course. Today we're jumping into r/TalesofNeckbeards. Yes, indeed, we've got some more of that TBOATI saga posted one day ago, so you know it's fresh. And this is the end, part 1, which is actually kind of sad. We're gonna see TBOATI out, I suppose, but that's also kind of good news since it means that the character consultancy has been blowing up enough that she can select her clients instead of having to put up with this kind of crap that this beard has been putting her through. It's been quite a ride. We have felt her frustration through her writing, and thankfully this is one of those Neckbeard stories that doesn't end up getting too heavy. A little kickback for today, so I hope that you guys will enjoy it. I want to get some plugs and disclaimers out of the way, and then we will dive into some TBOATI Neckbeard cringe. The Beard of 1,000 Irritations. The End, Part 1. Hi everyone, and welcome to Part 11 of my experiences with the Beard of 1,000 Irritations, or TBOATI for short. If you found this part and wanted to start at the beginning, you can find Part 1 here, except you can't click that. The links to all of the previous parts are in the description, so you can click all of those at your leisure. Though probably not at once, or else it's gonna be like a cacophony of my voice, which that's kind of what hell sounds like, actually. I don't know if you knew that. It's an accurate simulation. I've broken this part up into 2 posts because ReddX has been narrating this saga on his channel, and I think if he reads the whole thing in one go, he's gonna be just about puffed out by the end. You know I love to puff out though. To quickly recap, TBOATI has a sci-fi world in the works and hired me, a writing coach, to help him with his world building development and get his story written and ready for publishing. And I will make an aside here to say that if you need help with writing of any sort, the character consultancy is lurking in my Discord, so you can reach out to her there. She does all kinds of writing help, tabletop RPGs, novels, short stories, whatever you want. Just don't get weird with it, or you might end up in a story. Working with TBOATI has been frustrating at times, so I wrote down my experiences with him here to help me stay sane. I've changed a few details to protect both the innocent and the bearded. I'd like to make a quick apology to ReddX for the last post. What? Sorry for dragging up a whole lot of politics with the story, dude. Oh, it happens. It's kind of, you know, part and parcel. I just dip around it as much as possible because I want everybody to feel welcome, no matter your political affiliation or religion or whatever. If you're not a neckbeard, then I welcome you with open arms. That's my one caveat. This one will have some ethics stuff in it, but we're not dipping into politics in this part. Thank God. And apologies to everybody else who didn't come here to read about politics. True enough, let's all keep in mind that cringe is for everyone. We can all enjoy. You guys are gonna need a cast list, so here it is. OP, a 30-something from Wales with an online writer coach business. The Beard of 1,000 Irritations, TBOATI. Our star. A European ex-customer now, of mine, with a dystopian post-apocalyptic sci-fi story in the works. I've only seen one picture of him, and I can tell you that he's clinically obese and has no beard. Not outwardly anyways. But it's the beard on the inside that counts. I've never met him, so I can't report on his hygiene, but I do know that his mom cooks for him. He has a long-distance relationship going with an American girl. And then we've got Jay, TBOATI's co-writer and co-star for these stories, I suppose. At least the last couple entries. TBOATI depends on this guy to write the creative material for this project. Jay usually wasn't very talkative to me, which TBOATI managed by being the spokesman for the pair of them. Jay comes from a country which is known for having an issue with rampant poverty and sometimes with a regressive attitude towards women. And I'm still wondering what that country is, but I'm not going to put any more continents on blast. So far, all I've been able to do was send messages to Jay and get a single reply. We had yet to even have an in-depth conversation, and this is where I finally got to do just that. My first impression of Jay in a live conversation was that he was much easier to talk to than TBOATI. His wording was much more crisp, and he had more of a can-do attitude, and he could be assertive. I felt more confident in him to communicate with than I did with TBOATI. That didn't allay all my concerns, however, about how he wrote about women. Yeah, you could be easy to talk to and still have like some sort of disconnect regarding some things. The first issue that I raised in our three-way discussion, me, Jay, and TBOATI, for anyone who's not following, was with that prostitution scene with the anime folk that he wrote for the project some time ago. My concern had been that the subject of prostitution and sex trafficking was being exploited to make TBOATI's story more grimdark. Jay responded to my concerns about that, saying that prostitution wasn't his cup of tea, and that the anime folk would get their revenge on the people who had exploited them. Isn't this the same guy that wrote about, like, non-consent in some of his previous stories? But prostitution, that's where we draw the line. Well, he's not even drawing the line, really. He's just like, I'm not into it. It's not my cup of tea. I also raised the issue of the flirty niece in the story that I talked about in part 10. He said that he understood my confusion and assured me that the niece was very capable and focused. That struck me as a strange thing to say, as there was nothing for her to be capable with in that story. She played no part other than just flirting with her uncle. Yeah, that good old creepy uncle. Every story needs one. Then there was her strangely carefree attitude, so I asked about that too. He responded with, "Although she does fear her father's eventual death, she tries to be strong for him and her mother." He also asserted that she was a teenager in that story, which, again, wouldn't be true given the timeline in the original canon. I repeated that she'd likely be 40 or 50 and act accordingly, regardless of how old her body would have aged. And he replied that the demigoddess in that world mature really slowly. Any excuse to write a flirty, dirty teenager, huh? For the record, canon does not imply this at all. This all came entirely from Jay. Wouldn't it be so weird to have a society of like 40-year-old teenagers? Oh wait, that's what we got. Arrested development everywhere. I can make that joke because I'm totally part of it. Sitting down playing on my Nintendo Switch. Look at me walking around with a backpack. Oh God, I shouldn't talk about backpacks again. I'm still getting comments from that story. I think it was Deadpool Beard or something. To be clear, it's all just jokes, all right? I love being a man-child. But that's another tangent. It just didn't inspire me with confidence that he felt comfortable writing fully grown women. He also answered my concern about the mother being voiceless by telling me that that was just what the customer who'd commissioned that piece had wanted for, some reason. Yeah, it's the customer's fault. They're not here to defend themselves, so it's totally his fault. When I asked about his client base, I pointed out the large quantity of lollipops and insects, etc., the sorts of taboo works that were in his library. And I said, dude, where are you getting your customers from? I ask this for a very specific reason. If you're getting a certain niche of customers, it's because you're doing something to reinforce getting more work within that particular niche. I've developed a few audiences in my time, and by now, I'm comfortable with developing audiences in specific niches and what it takes to achieve that. I wondered whether Jay had just fallen into this niche by accident. Like I said in the last section, that happened to me with foot fetish customers. Despite me not being interested in feet, I just happened to get a foot customer as my first commission, and the next few found me because that's what was in my gallery. And it clearly sold them on my ability to write what they wanted better than I don't know, something bondage related? Or whatever you're into. No kink shame, but no kink same. But I'll still write about it if you're paying me that dollar bill. Or at least I would, if I was still in that position. OP won't, though, to be clear. She is also over that point in her life. We're both getting up and out. High five. Assuming that the same thing had happened to Jay was really the only thing I could think of to try and give him the benefit of the doubt, he said he had no idea how he'd gotten this particular audience. I asked him if having this niche bothered him, and he said, "Nope, I don't judge people by their kinks. If they keep it in fiction, writing, and comics, I mean, I sure as hell don't approve, but I'm not squeamish." Like I said, I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, so I offered on the spot to help him redirect his customer base so that he could steer away from getting the kind of work that he had been getting and start working in something a bit more benign. Yeah, maybe get a few things in that portfolio that you could like show a potential employer, unless your employer's really into lollies. And in that case, I probably don't want to work for that guy. There are two reasons that I'm wary of malignant niches. The first is the difficulties with writing them while also doing my job properly. I take more of a technical approach than one of pure storytelling, and I use psychological principles to make the character development make sense, explore other opportunities, seek out my customers' blind spots, and so on. That means that misusing traumas and kinks creates a conflict of interest in my work. See Bratbeard as a prime example. I don't intend to kink shame, I just know that I can't win if I get commissions like this, and often neither can my customer. I don't know, man. I'm probably painting with the really wide brush here, but it seems to me like most kink commissions are more about getting off than, actual quality writing. I don't really know. I've never commissioned or written anything like this. But it seems to me the primary purpose is to get your rocks off. But OP continues. The second reason is my investment into this niche. I've worked hard for 2.5 years to develop my business. I've put in my own money to pay my rent and bills when not enough work has come in, and I've gone a long way towards developing a corner of the market that didn't really exist before I started: psychological character development. Because this is such an underdeveloped field, I want to build trust with my audience, and I don't believe I'm going to achieve that by treating trauma with less respect than it deserves. Bear in mind that a lot of writers, my main client base, have been through traumas themselves, and that's why some of them retreat into the world of writing. So I'm better off treating this area with respect than capitalizing on it for shock or drama. It's a respectable viewpoint, although the earlier part of the statement makes me think about how TBOATI has really helped you develop this thing and what it has become. It started as a world building development exercise and you're like, that's not really what I'm into. And then you focus more on the character development, which I think is pretty interesting. Things are constantly evolving. This channel started off with r/entitled parents. And then it blossomed into Neckbeardery and kind of took on a life of its own, which I think is really cool, I'm mostly just along for the ride, tending to the stories and whatnot, but the community is really what makes this channel go, Much how, in a weird way, the client base is what makes the character consultancy go. But again, I digress. If I thought that Jay had suffered these things himself and was exploring what happened to him and how to integrate that into his life experience, then that would be different. But I'd also not expect a survivor to write their life experiences as a kink. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just didn't feel right. I was concerned at having my business associated with positive representations of these kinks. Like I said, I've been focused on building trust for over 2 years. I feel that trust would be severely undermined by having my business name associated with these materials. If someone else wants to make a copycat business and take shock value commissions, they can. Like I said, they're probably going to come up against some technical difficulties, but I'm going to steer clear. Hell, I've already seen one copycat who wanted to cater to shock value works. They disappeared pretty quickly, possibly because they lacked the psychology training, so they couldn't deliver on the expertise front. I mean, it's a big wide world. There's a lot of room to find success in different ways. I don't think working with shock value every day would be good for your mental health. Oh wait, that's exactly what I do every day. Don't worry, I talked to a therapist. I have a lot of people reach out to me like, hey man, you cover some heavy stuff. Are you doing okay? I'm like, yeah, I'm doing just fine. Got it handled. Ain't my first rodeo. And I do genuinely enjoy rolling in filth. There just has to be a good balance between the funny filth and the really horrible filth. That's the secret sauce. Anyways, Jay, on the other hand, seems to have far less reason to worry about his image as a writer than I do as a character consultant. That was a pretty big tangent. I went on 2 sub-tangents within your tangent, so don't feel too bad. Sorry about that. Let's get back into the discussion. I asked Jay to tell me about the female characters in his project to see who else there was, but Rebecca, I half expected, based on TBOATI's laser focus on Mallory and Rebecca, that there were probably very few other characters, but Jay told me that indeed there were a few more. He started by talking about Rebecca, of course. He said that her suffering in her deadly state of origin was deliberately intended to be an eye-opener for how bad things can get in their world. He mentioned her superpower of empathy and said that it made her naive and easily trusting, but insisted that she wasn't childish, for reals. I personally don't think all of that fits into the same character, as trust is one of the first things to go with trauma, but I was there to listen, not teach, so I just stayed quiet and let him continue. And at least he can continue. He's got a lot more to say about this crap than TBOATI because he's the one that's actually penning it, you know? Instead of overseeing it. Jay also said,
she craves physical contact and affection, but not in a sexual manner.
Which was not what I expected to hear, and was a little more positive than I had feared. He also said,
she likes to sleep on the same bed with anyone else, be they females and or males, because she suffers from nightmares or night terrors otherwise.
He also said that
Rebecca wouldn't hesitate to harm or even kill if necessary, though only as a last resort.
I mean, to me, last resort means you hesitated a whole lot, but that was Rebecca's deal, according to Jay. He also briefly mentioned Mallory, and I was glad to hear that unlike TBOATI, he was prepared to give Mallory a character flaw. He told me that Mallory had
something of a short fuse despite his analytical mind.
Yeah, but that character's still boring as hell. It's like taking a cardboard cutout and putting like a necktie on it and being like, look, it's a fully functional person now. No, that's not how any of this works. He insisted that the female characters
wouldn't be treated as sex objects,
and that they had just as good a chance at succeeding in the main super state that the story is set in as any male character. That's an easy assertion to make, but I wanted to see this in action for myself. Anyway, Jay gave an example of a second female character, a high-up figure in the smuggling community, who would remain in the shadows for most of the story. In fact, she sounded pretty much like the female equivalent of that smuggler king that I talked about several parts back. When I asked Jay her age, he said that she was 40 years old. An older woman in a story. Yay! And Jay went on to say that she had
no issue with killing or maiming others if she needed to.
Bro, what's up with the killing and maiming? I don't like to establish patterns too early, but I couldn't help but notice that injuring or killing came up twice here. Okay, me and OP are in the same boat. I don't know how any of that applies. Female characters kicking ass is one thing, but I personally like to see more problem solving than this. Making tough decisions like kill or don't kill is a sign of a strong character, but what other hard decisions might one of these characters need to make? That would have really helped me feel more confident with these characters. We'd been talking for some time by this point. Jay said that he had to leave the discussion to go eat, but before he left, he said that there were 3 other main female characters that he wanted to tell me all about. And what a treat it was, I'm sure. I just want to remind you, reader, that TBOATI had been present throughout this discussion. So while Jay was away, I asked how far through the exordium they both were. For anyone not following, an exordium is just a fancy name for a collection of short stories used to introduce a bigger story or world. And TBOATI had told me long ago that he wanted to write one. Or rather, have Jay write one. He'd first said this well over a year ago, so surely some of those short stories were finished by now. Yes, surely. Well, TBOATI answered. He said,
He didn't remember saying that he'd write 50.
So I pointed out that he'd said it in his project planning session. I checked the document for this first to make sure I had my facts straight. After I jogged his memory about that, he said that he,
slowly recalled setting that goal.
He then told me that they hadn't yet, because they'd
got a bit stuck due to life getting in the way.
This coming from the guy who spent weeks on end playing video games. I've said it 2 or 3 times before, but the dude mostly just likes the idea of being a writer. He doesn't have what it takes to hack it, you know? Just like there's a bunch of people out there that like the idea of being a YouTuber. They're like, hey, ReddX, I'm gonna do this. And I'm like, cool, man. But talk is cheap, all right? I definitely think that you should pursue your passion, but all of that starts with a first step, you know? You know who I told that I was starting YouTube when I started YouTube? Myself. Nobody. I sat down and said I wanted to do this and started making crappy videos. And now my videos are still pretty crappy, but at least they're less crappy. Anyways, the point is, if he really wanted it, then he would have completed, 1, 2, maybe 10 short stories by now. A year is a long time, dude. You can't just sit around to wait for it to magically happen. I'm sure most people know this. I'm essentially just talking to myself at this point. I said that it seems strange to not have finished at least a few short stories in an entire year, and TBOATI said,
I think Jay can help answering this.
My human shield. When Jay returned, he concurred and said,
life got in our way, and we barely got to see each other once a week, if that, for like 3 months, so we're still working on them.
None of which made clear how many stories had actually been written and finished. 0. I move on to my next question and hope that I would get a clear answer. I asked how many core team members there were and who they were. He said,
we're the main body and the artists are like one-offs for this or that.
That was the end of our first discussion. I was so glad for the break. And I took some time out to assess how I felt, think about everything that had been said so far, and consider what else needed to be said. By the next day, I'd gathered my thoughts and wrote them into the 3-way conversation. I still didn't want to be associated with rape, non-con, incest, or lolly content, even if it was association with somebody else who wrote that, and suggested to him that I have a plan to help out with that, but that he would need to remove the content that he already had up. Oh, that's a big ask, isn't it? I think we now have a glimpse at why their business relationship fell apart. I acknowledge that I knew I was being very forward by saying that. I mean, it was his gallery, not mine, but that my insistence was partly fueled by my concerns for his project. We may have had a firm customer base, but TBOATI had told me in his project planning session that he wanted to sell 100 million... Stop. Yeah, right. Let's start with 100, bro. Let's get there first. Jesus. 100 million or more copies of this project as a multi-part story, and to ultimately get it made into an animation. Somebody's gonna spend hours of their life animating this shit. God damn it. I can't. Knowing all that I now know, come on, dude. You don't get anywhere near that level of success without someone noticing other parts of your presence online. And I didn't even want to imagine the shit show that could happen if his past works came significantly into the public eye. I mean, I definitely didn't want my company's name to be on anything when the fecal matter hit the air conditioning device. And that would definitely happen if you sold 100 million copies, which he won't, but better safe than sorry, I do suppose. Also, I could see why TBOATI had such confidence in Jay. Jay had a way of talking with confidence and sounding like he could get things done. And yet, when I thought about it, he really hadn't told me that much, or even allayed my concerns. TLDR, I have a big discussion with the quieter half of a pair of beard writers and his questionable online content, and how all that will end up impacting his magnum opus. Yeah, I don't know, man. Seems like you should have vetted this guy out a little bit more. Maybe it's one of those live and learn type of things, but this this whole business relationship has been non-functional the entire time, so I guess it's only for the best that you decided to cut ties. I'm quite curious to, see the sparks, a little bit of an explosion going off, but I guess we'll have to wait until part 2 for all that to happen. I've talked briefly with the OP in my Discord server regarding TBOATI's story, and, apparently maybe they have some short stories written, and I did offer some cash if TBOATI would allow me to read them on the channel, because I think that would be the best way to put a nice little bow on all of this, as horrible and boring as it might be. I just want to see it with my own eyes. But I don't know if TBOATI will ever respond to that offer. He seems like the neurotic sort, so I don't have the highest hopes for it, but who knows, man? Crazier things have happened, I should probably get into reading some Iowa beard stories. Speaking of crazy neckbeard writers, that might be a fun thing to get into eventually, but I digress. I do hope that you guys have enjoyed this story. I'm quite looking forward to part 2. If you are as well, I hope that you'll like, comment, and/or subscribe. Maybe share the video around if you should like. As always, we've got a giant link swarm in the description. And I hope that you guys will check out some, maybe even all of those links, including my social medias. We got Twitter, Discord, Facebook, Patreon. Yes, indeed, my gorgeous, wonderful, beautiful, generous patrons. I would like to thank them all, but especially Robert Waits, TSM Kirby, Teddy the Police, Aaron W, Delicious Jelly Donut, Candy Sora, Fire Drake, Livison, Silent Revolver, Zathras, Zero MMX, Little Lone Wolf, Vanilla Mel, Rouse Tower, Derpy Tricks, Aaron Lennox, Fisher Diggy, James Cook, JM Coon, Jerry, John Hero, Miss Monday, Melgar the Destroyer, Mirthful Baker, my boy Not One Nick, Lady Nix, Katykins Elizabeth, Sidestep, Cider Drinker, Serrated Ash, Siegfried, Synaptic Boomstick, Brilliant Tamago, Tato Ferret, That Duck and Bug, Fusky Redwin, Goose Says Honk, Leon Embers, Naga Viper, A-Roxers, Cake Jerry, That's a Different Jerry, Crafty Kitty Cat, Maybe Next Time, Organic Cam, Princess Rosalie, The Last Shinobi, and the maestro himself, Zuka Cervantes. We've also got a few new friends joining us today, so a big welcome to Steampunk Ellie, Caustic Fox, and Fat Shrimp. Fat Boy Shrimp. I like that Fat Boy Shrimp. He's definitely my weapon of choice. It's a reference to a band. Nobody knows. I'm just too old. But I do thank you guys so much for supporting the channel monetarily, putting your money where your mouth is and whatever, or money where my mouth is, I guess is more accurate. It's super cool, you guys. Videos get demonetized sometimes, but I got my patrons to lean back on, so I don't have to worry about it none too much. If you guys would like to join these lovely people in helping out with the Patreon, then I would be massively appreciative. That is absolutely huge. But if you can't do it right now, don't sweat it too hard, friends. I just appreciate you coming on through, hanging out with me, and I hope that you come on back and hang out with me again tomorrow, because really,
The views is how my beard stays buttered.
inject some leg beard, as we do. In order to join us again, you need to keep yourself safe out there, wash your hands, but also take some time out and do something that you personally enjoy today. Maybe watch some more ReddX videos, if you want. Always remember, friends, that you are loved, you are worthy, and you definitely deserve it. I will see you in the next one. And until then, friends, bye-bye.